And we welcome back all of you to WHTC's Talk of the Town for this Friday, May 28th. I'm Gary Stevens, final Friday of the month, or shall we say the fourth Friday of the month. We spotlight the Ottawa County Sheriff's Department. Normally we are joined by Ottawa County Sheriff Steve Kempker, but Steve has passed the baton today to Sergeant Mike VandenBosch. He is with Traffic Services, and it's appropriate that we have Mike on as we begin not only Memorial Day weekend, but we begin the summer vacation season. Mike joins us via the Zoom connection. Sergeant Mike VandenBosch, good morning and welcome back to WHTC.
Good morning, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Glad you are with us. And if you have a question for Sergeant VandenBosch, you'll be happy to answer it at 616-395-1450, 616-395-1450. I was looking, and why I was a little bit hesitant before when we started this segment was the fact that I was looking for the release from the State Office of Highway Safety Planning, the usual week holiday incentives to try to keep people driving safely. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, that this particular Memorial Day is the click it or ticket incentives. I believe, am I correct on that?
You are correct. Yes, that seatbelt enforcement details have begun. They started on May 17, and they run up through June 7. So currently we are out looking for, not only seatbelt violations, but any type of violation that could be a factor in a serious injury or fatal traffic crash.
One of the things, and it goes along with the fact that we have had seatbelt or drunken driving enforcement efforts for years, decades perhaps. One would think the message has already been sunken in and people are getting the message. Unfortunately, the fact that we still have these campaigns is an indication we're still not getting the message through to everybody.
Right. Well, the state of Michigan does have a really good seatbelt compliance rate. It hovers around 94%. But we still find that, unbelted drivers, when it comes to what could be a crash where they walk away from, if they're not wearing a seatbelt, they're either injured, seriously injured, or, worse yet, we have a fatality. So the message just continues to be that we should wear our seatbelts to prevent injury and from being ejected from a car. So that's our efforts right now over this Memorial Day weekend.
Again, if you have a question for Sergeant Mike VandenBosch of the Ottawa County Sheriff's Department, he'll be happy to answer it at 616-395-1450. I'll explain a little on my situation and then use that to get to the next question. For me, seatbelt usage is instinctive. It's almost as if I'm not even thinking. Boom, it's already on, and then away I go. But if, for example, my mind's distracted a little bit, you get the dings, ding, and then a little bit ding, ding, then ding, 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 ding. I mean, let's just say it's there. Are you seeing, or is it a case sometimes that we get some people who disabled that particular function so that they don't have to hear the dings and don't have to be constantly reminded? Or is that something that is almost preventable in the sense they've proved it so people can't disconnect the warning signals?
Well, mechanically, I think that's becoming more and more difficult to do. But what we do observe out on the road is that individuals will buckle their seatbelt behind their back so that once it's latched, the ding, ding, ding goes away. As far as mechanically disrupting that audio from the vehicle, that's becoming more and more difficult. And manufacturers are looking at now audible tones for rear seat passenger belt use. So that's something I think we'll see in the future as well.
One thing I'm surprised, well, maybe not surprised, but a little surprised about the fact that many years ago, I thought that there was some efforts being made so that you cannot start the car unless the seatbelt would automatically go in as you nowadays push the button to start the car or turn the ignition. I thought that was in the works in the future, 1990s. I thought by this time, 2021, we would have that. We don't have that, but that would be one way of stopping it.
Actually, you've seen that go away with later model vehicles. So yeah, I would agree. Some of that automated seatbelt positioning was used for several years and then went away for whatever reason. I don't know, but yeah, the audible signals and that's what I hear for future of car manufacturers is that really a focus of now rear seat passengers being seatbelted as well.
And that's another point I want to bring up with you, involved with traffic services, Sergeant Mike VandenBosch, is the fact that we are very comfortable, or shall we say we are very accustomed to be buckling up if we are driving or being the front seat passenger. But the rear seat passengers, let's put it this way, a lot of people, and I'm going to be one of them, if I'm in the rear seat, normally I don't buckle up. It's not something I'm sort of used to, but yet, you have some problems that way too.
Right. Well, the law covers, individuals who are less than 16 years of age in the back seat. So I think that's the reason why we don't buckle up. But when you talk about safety, there's really no reason not to buckle up. And you're to your point earlier, it's a habit that you have to get into. If you're not in the habit of putting on the seatbelt, we find that it just doesn't get put on. So, and for parents out there who have young kids in the car, they're watching you. I have young kids, and we all get in the car together, start the car, and we all make sure our seatbelts are on before we leave. And our impressionable youth are watching, and we need to set a good example for them.
Peg McNichol in the WHTC newsroom has a question for you. Go ahead, Peg.
So let's talk about those younger tweens and teenage passengers who often like to tilt the seat back. Sometimes adults do this too and take a little nap with the seat back. That's hazardous, isn't it?
Well, it can be. I mean, the vehicle's not, when they do the crash testing, those tests are not done with seats in those positions. While wearing a seatbelt always helps prevent injury, anytime an individual is either not wearing a seatbelt as it's designed and tested or in a position of seating that's not designed and tested could also be a hazard. You're absolutely right.
616-395-1450, 616-395-1450. Let me go back to an earlier generation or three on this. We don't see it too much nowadays, but at times, and there's old TV shows or old movies which show people, especially in a pickup truck, people, when the old style pickup trucks where we only had two seats, basically, two or three people, and you would have people either seated or standing in the cab of the pickup truck. We're not seeing that much, but really that is a safety hazard as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and you're right. You don't see very many just single cab pickup trucks anymore. And most of them are either extended or crew cab pickup trucks, but there are a few out there. But yeah, anytime, it brings back riding in the back of a pickup truck too. There are certain laws and ages and speeds that have to be maintained and on the roadway with all of that. So yeah, not a good idea.
It's not only is it not a good idea on the roadways, it's also become not a good idea. Sometimes we've had some accidents in the fall when we've had hay rides. And, you think they're going slow enough, no problem. But all of a sudden you hit a bump, especially in the dusk. And then we have some issues.
Absolutely.
616-395-1450, 616-395-1450. Touch upon a more recent phenomenon, Mike VandenBosch, as we're talking motoring safety on this opening weekend of the summer vacation season that gets underway today. The emphasis on drunken driving, the emphasis on seatbelt use have been over a number of years. But distracted driving has become more, it's almost as in the rotation now with the special enforcement periods that we have throughout the year. Are we seeing an increase in distracted driving? And I'm talking not just texting, but distracted driving with phones, with instrumentation on the vehicles, and even some of the old standbys like kids in the back seat are trying to have a bite to eat on the way of getting to where you need to go.
We've had crashes caused by all those points. Distracted driving is an issue. We know that. It's underreported because sometimes we don't know that's a factor in the crash unless somebody, either tells us about it or there's a witness that can indicate that they saw some distracted driving prior to a crash. So we know that it's underreported, but obviously still an issue. And, with cell phone use, there is legislation right now at the state level for Michigan to become a hands-free state for all drivers. Right now, that just covers commercial motor vehicle drivers and drivers with graduated driver's license levels 1 and 2. But in law enforcement, we're hoping to see that that's passed.
And more vehicles are enabled to have the hands-free driving capability, which is nice. But the problem is still you're focusing on other things. And yeah, we can all be noble, Sergeant Mike VandenBosch, and say, oh, we need to be concentrating on the road every moment that we're driving. But we're human, especially if we're driving for an extended period of time, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Your mind wanders. And especially if you're going down, an expressway or a highway. Unfortunately, human nature as it is, we're going to get distracted one way or the other.
Yeah, and if you're not 100% focused on the driving task, then the increases of a crash go up. So whether that's phone use or passengers or eating or doing whatever else behind the wheel, we've seen increases of your chance of being involved in a crash. So absolutely.
616-395-1450, 616-395-1450. If you have a question for Ottawa County Sheriff Sergeant Mike VandenBosch, he is with Traffic Services. A few years ago, when I was a kid, I used to collect maps, and I used to ask our fine refineries, gas stations, I'd like to go to, take a drive from Detroit to St. Louis. And our friends at Shell had a little brochure that they handed out where they put a map of the U.S. on little hexagons. And they calculated that the safest period of time for someone to be driving at any one time without a break is 4 hours. And they put hexagons around areas where, it would be a 4-hour drive from this point to this point. Am I being a little too simplistic based on your experience dealing with accidents and dealing with driving as you do? 4 hours might be a good standard to say after 4 hours, take a break one way or the other?
Well, yeah, I think we've all made trips that are longer than 4 hours, and we've all become fatigued behind the wheel. We know how dangerous that is. It's pretty comparable to impaired driving. However, what we see drivers who are, motorists on their way to work in the morning who have had maybe not such a great night of sleep. It's a common issue in the early morning hours on the way to work for motorists to fall asleep and crash. So, it's not just a period of time behind the wheel, but, what's going on in individuals' lives? How well are they sleeping? What kind of medications are they on? That can also cause fatigue driving, and it's extremely dangerous.
Mike, I need to touch upon the events of this past Sunday. It is a fear that I think a lot of motorists have, especially when they see the big fuel haulers moving around. They want to make sure nothing happens as what happened on M6 westbound before 8th Avenue this past Sunday morning.
Yeah, quite a crash. I was out there investigating that scene. Not a great scene by any means. Luckily, the tanker wasn't hauling anything extremely flammable. But as you know, that scene did catch fire, and both victims were very badly burned. So, yeah, the issue there again, obviously I don't want to comment too much. It's still under investigation, but we have a semi tanker that went off the road for an unknown reason. And we're still looking into those reasons. We may never know. But, this tanker flips over, the fuel tanks rupture and then catch fire. and then really a motorist with nowhere to go struck that unit. So terrible scene, and feel bad for the families involved there. But yeah, still under investigation. We're looking at a few things there.
And I wasn't really more or less asking about that particular situation, but again, the fears, especially when you see the big fuel haulers moving around and they got that little red diamond on their thing, that could be definitely, keep it away. You touched upon it a little bit earlier when we were talking, when I was bringing up the subject about, 4 hours being an optimum time for traveling. I mean, if you're up and at 'em, ready to go, especially like, for example, this weekend, okay? I'm going to go see my mom on the other side of the state. It's only about an hour and a half drive, so it's not too bad, but I'll be up, refreshed, and ready to go. Say if I was going to go to Cleveland. Cleveland's about a 4-hour drive away. You know what? That's about as far as we can go from here if you want to follow the rule. And you touched upon that when we talked about this, about the fact that there are other factors that could be causing people to have issues. And one of the issues, and you mentioned it in the early part of the day, but it could also happen at night too, or in the afternoon when we're talking about people who have weird hour shifts, sleep deprivation. As you're driving along, all of a sudden, it's just, your mind starts being, you start wandering, the mind starts wandering, and all of a sudden, your mind might be somewhere else, but your body is still in that car, and we got problems.
Just like you mentioned, daydreaming, right? I mean, it's not fatigue driving, but when you are thinking about something else and, you get into that deep thought and you don't realize the last few miles of the roadway that you traveled or what traffic lights you went through and didn't even realize what color they were. That's a recipe for a bad traffic crash. So yeah, daydreaming, fatigue driving, it really is the same.
Yeah, it is the same. And trying to address the sleep deprivation issue. I know we have rest stops from place to place. There are, the MDOT has its car cool spots that sometimes have a vacancy and be able to nod off in there. But, sometimes you see a vehicle on the side of the road and many times one of you in brown or our friends in blue would come up behind it and all the guy's doing is trying to take a nap on the side of the road. Sometimes that's not the best thing to do. Sometimes when you can't get to the rest stop, you can't get to the exit right away.
Yeah, we would never encourage anybody to pull off the shoulder of especially a freeway, because you're fatigued. But you got to try to get out of the lane right away, the road right away, off to an exit, some private parking lot. We would encourage, but stopping along a roadway to do that is not a good idea.
So again, Sergeant Michael VandenBosch of the Ottawa County Sheriff's Department, the emphasis for this particular Memorial Day with the extra funds from the State Office of Highway Safety Planning through federal funds is dealing with seatbelt use, the click it or ticket campaign. But again, this first weekend of the holiday season, your officers, the sheriff's deputies and the state troopers and the police officers, they'll be looking for more than just the seatbelt use.
Absolutely. So, we're looking for excessive speed, distracted driving, red light running, impaired driving as well. So, all of those factors, 4 major factors that can be considered in a severe injury or fatal traffic crash. So that's really what the focus is, along with the seat belts. And I will also mention that I think, coming out of this COVID that we've been in, we're seeing a lot of aggressive driving on the roadway right now. It seems that motorists are just very impatient. I think it's a factor from COVID. Everybody's starting to move around. Our fatalities are up. Our traffic crashes are up. Our general incidences, just dealing with just aggressive behavior, are up. So we would just ask that, especially behind the wheel, just take your time, slow down, take a deep breath, leave some, space between you and the vehicle ahead of you, slow down and get to where you're going safely.
Yeah, you mentioned about the road rage situation, the young child that got shot and killed in a road rage thing. Just a little 6-year-old was sitting in the car and flying bullet, and they're still looking for the driver and motorist involved with that. And you think, well, road rage is only for the big cities. Could happen anywhere. Absolutely.
It's daily here. Our 911 dispatcher unit receives phone calls of aggressive and road rage incidents almost daily. So it's something that we're just asking the motorists to please be patient, take a deep breath, and get to where you're going safely.
Indeed. And those are wise words to hear as we are getting into the holiday season. And of course, we have young drivers. And be patient with them, just even if they're not in a student driver marked vehicle. We'll see more of those coming around. But, sometimes the young drivers either are too cautious or not cautious enough. It's like, I hate to say this, Mike VandenBosch, it's like teenagers as it is. There's no middle ground. It's either one way or the other.
Yeah, if you look at some of our crash attributes in the county, we have a way of searching some of the, what's attributed to the crash. And young drivers is our number one attribute for a traffic crash in the county. And I think that's pretty consistent statewide. So absolutely. And that's considered, under 24 years of age.
Yeah, because they don't have the experience to be able to know when there's trouble and being able to drive defensively, as they say. Mike VandenBosch, Ottawa County Sheriff Sergeant with the Traffic Services Unit. I want to thank you very much for joining us this morning on WHTC's Talk of the Town to share your expertise. We hope, frankly, that you and the other men and women in brown have a kind of boring weekend. Not much to do, just basically, making the cars look by so that everybody's driving safe, everybody's driving defensively, and we don't have to report a lot of problems on Tuesday morning. We wish you and all the deputies well. Look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thanks, Gary. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you very much. Mike VandenBosch, Sergeant Mike VandenBosch of the Ottawa County Sheriff's Department.